what I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have.
I've had rainbows in my clouds. And the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud.
We all really, really love one another. Deep down, we all love one another, and we need to get back to that.
Hi, welcome to the Authentically You podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, and I am here with my business colleague and expert in organizational psychology, Dr. Karen Walker. And I thought we needed to have a conversation today about behavior and how people are acting and why people are acting this way. We're seeing a lot of craziness, and I think Karen and I were just talking, like, we need to talk about the effects of this and maybe how we can all combat it. And so Karen, my dear friend here, has extensive experience in this. This is what she does, is analyze people and their behaviors. So Karen, I'm going to let you just kind of start off with some of the things you were mentioning, like the concerns, how this quarantine is affecting people, and behaviors and things we need to look out for.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, as an organizational psychologist, I think it's most important to talk about the kind of aftermath of what's going on, right? I mean, truly, this is crisis management in real time. And I think we're looking at this in terms of organizations, from leadership being able to put their influence on their people, but being able to manage anxiety, not only in their employees, but in themselves. And how do we do that when we're finding out information that's so on the extreme, like every minute, it seems like, right?
Right.
So I think that is just one aspect of it, because we were talking earlier, you and I, about how anxiety is just your body's natural response to stress. But when you add on top of that, people that already may have existing disorders or pre-existing conditions that we talk about. And then the fact that we don't know the uncertainties ahead of us, it can just make anxieties to the extreme or last for longer. So that's what is really kicking in, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just the uncertainty here is what needs to be managed.
Well, and I think that, we've got social media blaring, right? Like lots of misinformation being put out there, videos, causing hysteria of empty shelves, people just acting insane in supermarkets, younger people like stealing toilet paper from older people. I mean, we have a lot of hysteria going on because of so much misinformation coming out. And, it's always interesting to me when we have something like this, people start to lose their minds. I mean, they just start acting strange. And you mentioned anxiety, obviously, fear of the unknown. And then also something that, at least this is the first time in your and my lifetime that we were affected by this, schools are shutting down for 3 weeks. Many organizations are sending their employees remote. And recently I just read that several states are forcing bars and a few other types of businesses to close, which is dramatically affecting small businesses across the country with a massive loss of revenue. So let's talk about that, because people are feeling uncertainty in their jobs. I know people who have basically been put on leave with no pay. People are feeling uncertainty about their children. What's going to happen for 3 weeks? How do I keep them safe? How do I work my job? So let's talk about just how does someone manage that? And maybe you can also talk to just the hysteria, like why, not that the answers of why everyone's acting like this.
Of course, right? Everybody's always like, can you diagnose me on the spot? Well, no, first of all, let me put that out there. No, I don't do that. But I will speak to the mass hysteria in the sense that, even the word, right, social distancing, it's just a complete polar opposite of what we have going on in society of this, right? You may have heard this term of FOMO, right? This fear of missing out. The mentality that we have of everybody on social media wanting to be involved, always wanting to be in the know, always wanting to be where the action is. And now we're telling everybody, no, get away from each other. Get as far away as possible. Don't be in the action. Don't be in the know. So it's going against like this natural curve of society. But I think what we are seeing here is just the that natural response of what happens when we are having increased stress, and I think it is the essential personnel that we are trying to protect, right? Those in the care system, the healthcare system, so they can continue to do their job. And we think about the people that have to go on and continue in those job fields. And then also as parents, right? You are essential personnel. You've got to continue to function and maintain anxiety levels for the people around you. I think that's important, right? It's that old saying of put your kind of oxygen mask on first and then help the ones around you. Otherwise, you're going to pass out and then they're like, are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the other day we were going to on a little hike, and my daughter was like, I don't want to get sick. All my friends said you have to be quarantined for 6 months, and all this misinformation. As we're driving there, she kept saying, I don't want to get sick, Mom. And I turned around and I looked at her and I said, do you think I would ever put you in harm's way? And she was like, no. And I said, then you need to just relax, stop being hysterical. And I think as a parent, the more calm we can be, especially to our children who don't understand this, they're getting a lot of misinformation from friends and other people, and if any of these kids have access to social media, dear God, there's so much misinformation out there. Like you said, as a parent, we have to figure out that calm, because I think the more calm we are, the more we're able to, rationalize this and look at it. It's going to bring calm to other people. But, I haven't actually had any bad experiences in the stores yet. I mean, the stores I'm going to, the shelves are full. Everyone's very polite. But mind you, I've seen many videos and things of people acting just
Yes.
I mean, let me just side note, people, I don't understand the toilet paper. Like, if you're thinking essential items, go get some dry foods. Like, why are we fighting over toilet paper? Um, but
Right. Right.
this hysteria, and I know for me too, like, I'm trying to find a balance. Obviously, I'm not going to drag my kids out to every store because I do want to be mindful of them getting sick. But at the same time, I also can't lock them up for 20 days with zero sunshine, zero connection to people, because I think that would be, and give me your opinion on this, detrimental to their psyche to not have interaction with anything else.
It is definitely. You don't want to have any drastic changes in your schedule like that. Just like we would give good, and I say we, just in the field of,
Mm-hmm.
Mental health, we would want to be aware of flooding your system, right? Like in cases with post-traumatic stress disorders, you wouldn't want to like overwhelm your system with, too much of this, right? Too
Mm-hmm.
much of
Right.
anything is going to just flood your system. So you want to make sure you're having those good ways to release the stress. So, I mean, certainly getting fresh air, getting out, being able to relax. And the social distancing that they're recommending is really, you know, not going to like these bars and places like that, but it's not saying like you can't just take your kids out for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
and just casually like those type of things are still healthy, and being able to do the things that can free your mind in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where many of the moms locally here with me, we've all said like, hey, how can we help watch each other's kids? Do you guys want to get together and do play dates? I mean, we all know that we're not infected, and, we haven't, excuse me, we haven't been out of the country. And so we're trying to find that balance because, like today I forced my kids. I was like, we're going outside now. And they're like, oh, I don't want to go outside, and I was like, we're going outside. So, I drug them over to the beach. We were out there for 30, 40 minutes, just getting sun. We did a hike the other day, and it's amazing how that helps your psyche, because calmness comes in, peace comes in, happiness comes in. And, I think that's something that, as people feel such uncertainty right now, you know, as they're trying to figure this out, what else would you recommend? Let's say people are still having to work every day, right? They're
Mm.
still having to go into work, and they're stressed about that. Their kids are at home, they're at work. Can you give some suggestions for people who might be dealing with the anxiety or the frustration or this panic, and how they
Right.
might be able to deal with it?
Absolutely. I'd say you want to practice good, healthy boundaries for yourself. I mean, you know yourself better than anybody else does around you, right? So, I mean, it's just like if anybody's bringing that negative energy around you in any other type of situation, you want to make sure that you're able to distance yourself from that. Also, know when to kind of cut yourself off from too much, right? So, if you find that you're not sleeping because this is overwhelming you, I mean, you probably want to, stop watching some of this stuff before bedtime. It's not a good time to go and watch the latest Outbreak movie, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Watch
need to
watch
be,
romantics, people. Watch romantics.
right. It's a good time to kind of be putting some other types of things into your mind, practicing mindfulness. A lot of people talk about that. But, getting in touch with whatever, your faith is, that's important. Prayer has been a big, thing, calming your worries. This is the time to really be able to focus on some other areas and set healthy boundaries for yourself. um, and if you're able to telework, I mean, this is the time to do it. If you're not able to telework, the, they are putting some great extensions in place for leave, extended leave policies. And so I'd ask your supervisor about those,
Mhm.
because that's going to be necessary for you even to get some good, mental health breaks in your day.
Yeah. And Karen, you'd mentioned earlier too that several churches are offering to help out with daycare for the kids. So you guys should definitely
Yes.
check your local churches. Even if you're not a member, don't be afraid to reach out to those groups. They're fantastic. Reach out to moms groups. We're very lucky in our community. We have a wonderful library that kids can go into, and a rec center. But I mean, it's just a reality. I had a friend who lives in New York tell me that, the New York school system serves, a million plus kids. Out of those kids, something like, 170 or 80, 180,000 of them are in shelters. And a lot of times their free lunch is the only meal they get for that day. And the shelters typically don't let the kids in until the nighttime. So you can imagine that maybe some of just the panic that's ensuing for these kids, that their typical meal they get, they're not getting. Their safe place at the school, which is where they're at all day, that's good for them, is not there. And so I can imagine throughout our country, we have so much stress and so much anxiety. And, for me, being able to, offer and invest back in other people, reaching out to moms and saying, listen, I know you have to work. Bring your kid over here. We'll support you. And just creating that support definitely brings calmness when I'm giving back to someone. And like you said, it takes off that, if you're watching CNN all day, you need to stop. Right? Right?
Right, that is what we're talking about. I mean, you don't want to flood your system in any type of way. You've got to take good breaks. Just like if you were to be working too much, we would recommend get up, take a walk. Same type of thing. If you're going to be in this social distancing situation, you've got to be healthy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, do some other things. Don't just sit at home watching the news, because it is anxiety provoking. And next thing you know, you're going to be feeding into every conspiracy theory that there is out there. And so you want to make sure you're definitely practicing healthy coping mechanisms, which may be a good thing that some of the bars are closing. But on a serious note, though, I do appreciate you talking about churches. I did hear that today that a lot of churches, because they're not holding services, that they will be opening for daycare. But you do want to check in your local area, because I know there are some restrictions for, the amount of people they can take in. So.
Yeah. And I mean, there's lots of groups stepping in. So a quick Google search, guys, could find that. A quick Facebook search would find that. But I know that if I went back 7 or 8 years, I was working directly in an office, and so that would have been a huge nightmare for me to figure out, what to do with my toddlers. Because I don't know if preschools are closing down. I haven't checked into that. But if preschools are closing like the other school systems, once again, that creates everything complicated. But, if I could give any advice, and Karen and I, as we talk about this, one thing I've learned in the midst of anxiety and panic is that it doesn't get me anywhere. And so when I start to feel panic or anxiety, I take some different approaches. And Karen, I want you to share yours. Sometimes it's me breathing deeply, honestly, just going, it's going to be totally fine. And I'm taking deep breaths and I'm calming myself down. Sometimes it's me picking up a book and just kind of taking myself to a different world to get that anxiety away, reading about something. Sometimes it's exercise. I mean, I feel fantastic after exercising, and it's amazing sometimes how hard I'll fight it, but that's what will really fight away that depression, that anxiety. Exercise creates those happy endorphins in you. And so those are some of my tips when I'm feeling panicked, stressed, anxiety that I do. And Karen, I was hoping maybe you'd share some tips that you do when you're feeling that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you named like the top three.
Oh, sorry.
But no, but I definitely, I will talk about what I do. I mean, exercise is a big stress relief for me. But if I'm not able to do it, and some people aren't, because of injuries or the weather, whatever it might be keeping you from exercising. And sometimes that can be a challenge. But, I mean, I would say, especially in this time, it's like crisis management principles, right? Consider yourself like a mini crisis management leader,
Mhm.
and you can manage the unknowns for people. If you're able to, and everybody has a different spectrum for anxiety, so if you're not able to do this, understand your own weaknesses, and it's probably not a good idea to try. But sometimes, I actually can manage anxiety pretty well. And so being able to manage the unknowns for people. And what I mean by that is to be able to say, in situations like, I really don't know, especially as parents, to be able to tell your children, we really don't know, what we might be doing, while you guys are out of school, but I know that we're going to be safe, right?
Mhm.
So being able to tell people exactly what you do know and what you don't know in times of uncertainty is actually a way to manage anxieties. Of course, you never want to like make up information because that can increase anxieties, but being able to manage unknowns by saying like what exactly you don't know and what exactly you do know.
Yeah, that's true. And that's what I tell, my kids, when they ask me, they say, "Oh, are we going to get sick, blah, blah, blah." And I say, "No, you're here with me. You're home, you're safe." And as long as you're here with me, I'm going to keep you safe, And I think it's great that for those of you, because I have seen lots of posts on Facebook like, am I over, I'm totally panicking about this. Should I not be panicking? I'm not even worried about this. Lots of different feelings are coming out, and especially on Facebook, because I think people are desperate to connect and get validation that there's other people feeling this way. And
Hmm.
so, I think if we as a country can remain calm, if we can find ways to calm our anxieties, I think our behavior will calm down as well. The hysteria will calm down, because hysteria never helps anything. Um, and I think when we're calm, we have a clearer vision of what's going on. And I think for me, the last thing is you guys to ask yourself, like, what can I do to better the situation? Maybe it's just having a great attitude about it. Maybe it's sending out positive notes to people that you know. It's positive text messages to friends that you know are struggling about this. Um, I have a concern, Karen, that we're going to see a lot of depression from people kind of being locked up in their houses and not getting out, and fear and anxiety. And
Right.
and that's a worry I have, And so really encouraging people like, hey, you can go for a hike. I took my kids for a hike yesterday. There was no one on the trail. It was wide open, beautiful grassy area. We had a great time. And then we got back in the car and drove home. We went to the beach today. No one was out on the beach. We picked up shells. We did treasure hunts. I mean, had a good time and then came home. There was, no worry about that. So, but I think most important is that, as Karen and I both given a lot of advice here, is that don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to friends. Don't just text, get that interaction. I mean, especially if you're teleworking, right, Karen, and you're not getting that day-to-day interaction that you normally get.
Right. You do want to do more check-ins. I think that's very important. I'm glad you brought that up. In terms of depression, people can go into more of a social isolation. So you do want to be aware of that and do more check-ins with your buddies. In the military, we call that buddy checks.
Mm-hmm.
So just, get on the phone. That is important, and call somebody. And if you haven't heard from them in a while, or text them, just check in. Hey, want to know how you're doing. Hey, just checking on you, especially, to keep in mind that a lot of people have had, graduations canceled, weddings canceled,
Sports season canceled.
Yes,
Yeah.
a whole entire sports season canceled. And these are huge life impacting things that can really spin you out of control. So I just think it's important to do buddy checks. If you know that this was anybody's, big moment, I think it's important for all of us to kind of do a buddy check and say, hey, you know what, you're not the only one, and, we'll get through this. And, 2020 is, if anything, the most memorable year for everyone. So, and, we can do a makeup, graduation for you as soon as this is done. Or makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Karen and I were both college athletes, and we know what it would be like if our senior season had been canceled. It would have been devastating to me and her as well. And, graduations were such an important thing to me. I remember all my graduations, but in particular, obviously, my doctorate graduation and how important that was to me. And the thought of not getting to do that would be devastating. So, I mean, I think we're going to recover, and I think we'll make those up. Graduations will be made up. Lots of things will be made up. Obviously, there's some things that won't. But I think it's great, do the buddy check-ins, check in on your friends, especially if you haven't heard from them in a while. And if you're struggling, pick up the phone and call a friend, call them and just say, hey, I'm depressed today, talk to me. And, be honest. So, well, we're running out of time for this podcast, but Karen and I really wanted to reach out to you, one, because Karen being an expert in the world of behavior, I felt it was important that she gave you guys her insight into, what's going on. And we'll definitely do some regular checkups and follow-ups with this, Karen. I think it'd be good to once a week check in with you, and you say like, hey, okay, we're 7 days into this, this quarantine or whatever that they're wanting everyone to be in, let's talk about what's happening now with people and how they're feeling, right? Because I'm 2 days into this with my children and I'm like, I love you guys, but 20 days of not being able to do summer camps and school, and I myself am like, all right, let's check me in 7 days and see if I'm in a loony bin.
Completely normal. Emotions are normal, right? We're all gonna have them, so it's important to talk about them.
It is. So, well, I definitely think we should do a check-in in 7 days, and but I want to wish you guys just be safe and be smart, and when you have those anxiety moments, try and use some of those tips that Karen and I have both given you. And Karen, any last words for our listeners?
Well, I just want to say, that just to practice the things that everybody's talking about, it is important to do. Let's not overlook that. And social distancing doesn't mean that we can't still love, right? And that includes being kind to yourself. So that's the things that we mostly talked about today.
Awesome. Well, I have to have Karen send our podcast off like we normally would do with our Empowering Your Pink, Karen, because I just love it. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And stay bold, stay beautiful. Doctor's orders. Mwah.